Okay, so Wendy, thank you very much for making time to share your insights into the future of leadership. But before we walk into the future, can you share a little bit about your own backgrounds? Where did you grow up?
Absolutely.
Thanks, Wendy. Where did you
Well,
grow up?
I was born in Pietermaritzburg, but I was raised in Durban. So born in Pietermaritzburg, but moved down to Durban when I was 4 years old. So technically, I'm a Durbanite.
All right. And tell us, what was your dream career when you grew up?
Oddly enough, my dream career was to be a child psychologist, which in essence, in a way, is actually what I'm doing. It's what we do as a company is we focus on transforming cultures for inclusive innovation, and that involves elevating emotional intelligence, social intelligence, and thinking styles. And most of what restrains us in those three areas is as a result of programs that we acquire from mainly our 0 to 7 years. So in essence, I've reverted back to doing what my childhood dream was.
Okay, that's great. And tell us, who inspired you in your early days?
I went overseas at the age of 24. I studied in Durban, and then I got into my first position in Durban, and then I went overseas at 24. And the owner of the company that I worked for a company called Media Plus Holdings, and we did media projects globally. And the owner of the company was a gentleman by the name of Cho Capers, who was schooled in neurolinguistic programming, the language of the mind. And he really inspired me. I'd never before that point understood the mind, and I'd never before thought about changing my beliefs, that you can actually change beliefs. So he really was a transitional point for me when I met him.
And Wendy, looking back over your career, would you say there was a major turning point or maybe a number of turning points?
There are a number of turning points, but the most pivotal turning point in relation to my career was with that company that I mentioned beforehand. My first training project was Switzerland, and my second fully fledged project was Vienna. Austria, and I was based in Vienna. And it was a very, very traumatic experience, which is obviously a long story. And I wanted to quit every single day. Every single day I wanted to quit. And I'd say to myself, just one more day, just one more day. And we eventually managed to finish off the project with moderate success. My next project, though, was incredible. My next projects after that were incredible. And a year later, I was tasked with launching a travel magazine at the age of 25 across Europe. And that really was, if I could highlight a turning point in my career, that was a turning point. Because at a young age, I got management experience. And then my career just went from there in a certain trajectory. And I often contemplate, and I use that story a lot, because if I had decided to quit, I would never have then gone on to, I believe, have the success that I had in my career.
And tell us, Wendy, what is driving you today?
A better way to do business that serves the entire ecosystem, a better way to live, inclusively of ourselves and inclusively of others. So just striving for that better way for ourselves and as collectives.
Now, Wendy, looking into the future, and I know it's a big question, but what does the future of leadership mean to you?
I believe the future of leadership is inclusion. Though I suppose my lens is tainted because that is something that I'm exceptionally passionate about. We live in an ecosystem. We are all interconnected. All stakeholders are interconnected. All individuals are interconnected. And this age that we're in now at the moment is a win-win era for all stakeholders to thrive together. So I believe the future of leadership is inclusion.
And tell us, what have you learned from your own journey, and maybe the most recent journey that you consider most important for building future leaders?
To lead, one needs knowledge and experience. We do live in an age where we can't be ignorant of knowledge because we just have an abundance of it, though we need the experience too. And it's the combination of knowledge and experience that produces wisdom. And this isn't time dependent. And there's no shortcut. I'm always trying to find a shortcut, and life always pulls me back. And, you've got to have the experience. So as a leader, you've got to find ways of how you are going to get the experience. And it doesn't mean, in 1 year, I can acquire more experience in somebody in a leadership role in 10 years. It just depends on how you are utilizing that time.
Right. And tell me, when you speak to aspiring leaders, what is it you tell them about social media? How should they go about navigating social media to build their own leadership brands?
Well, firstly, I think the starting point is to define what is your brand, what do you stand for, and then define what is, once you've established that, what is your target market, who are you communicating to, and then tailor make your communication to each platform. There are certain platforms which are more business orientated, like LinkedIn. There are more social platforms like Facebook and so forth. Though your brand must still be consistent across all platforms, and you need to ensure that your voice is clear and it is authentic. So if you go into any of my platforms, you should see a consistent thread on all of the platforms, though it might be slightly tailored. And it also means that I've got to remain, as I said, authentic to what my brand is. It's great when I see people speaking out about certain things, but maybe that's not my brand as such.
Right. And Wendy, when you speak to, or what is your advice for future leaders, especially now in these times? What are the biggest challenges they're likely to encounter in their career?
Experience is and that's what I mentioned earlier, that one needs knowledge and experience to produce wisdom, and it's just there is no shortcut. So they've got to find as many suitable forms of experience that are out there. So, put your hand up for projects, apply to nonprofits to do volunteer work. There's no shortcut. You've got to get the experience. And even myself as an entrepreneur, I was an extremely successful executive. As I mentioned, my career path, once I got management experience, went on a trajectory of itself. I was an executive at 29. I was on a board, at 33. So I just assumed, especially considering I was in media and I was in sales and marketing executive positions, so I assumed when I started my own business 5 years ago that I'd naturally be a successful entrepreneur. Incorrect. Entrepreneurship is a very different field, and I didn't have the experience. So, I had to start from scratch, almost acquiring experience of how to navigate this new field. So you just, you might have aspirations, which are great to have aspirations, but sometimes you need the experience and the skills that you acquire through that experience before you get to that aspiration. So that's what you need to focus on now.
And Wendy, if you were to design a curriculum for future leaders, what are some of the new skills you would like to factor in?
Well, if you look at the WEF 2020 skills, they all center around emotional intelligence, social intelligence, different forms of thinking, creative, analytical, and so forth. And they all of those kinds of thinking, which, include even collaboration and leadership skills, they're all human skills. They're human-centric skills. So, an innovation is actually a compilation of all of those skills. So what I'd focus on is human skills, is mastering emotional and social intelligence, which you need for collaboration. You need that for innovation, mastering the different types of thinking. Most people don't even understand how they think. Just the simple neurological process of thinking, people don't even understand that. And then what are the different forms of thinking? What does it mean to think creatively, divergently? What does it mean to think, more analytically or more convergently? Those are concepts or, constructs that we don't focus enough attention on. And those are definitely your future skills.
And as a mentor to future leaders, Wendy, can you maybe share a success story or two where you mentored an upcoming leader and that person took your advice to heart?
Well, early on in my career as an executive, I had a staff member approach me wanting to apply for a management position, and I said no. I said staff member wasn't ready for that position, and I put her on a developmental program so she could acquire the skills through experience. We put her on as a junior team leader and so forth, and she didn't speak to me for virtually a year. And she reapplied for the position about a year later. And she then was successful and got into the position. Shortly after then being a manager, she came into my office and said, Thank you. Thank you so much for holding me back. Thank you so much for putting me on a developmental program. You know, I didn't understand the skills that go into leading, and I didn't have the experience, and I didn't realize it at the time. And, you know, I thought that you were being cruel by holding me back, and that you didn't have faith or belief in me. And she went on in that same cycle to actually get a global award for achievement within her particular within her particular role. So sometimes you need to be held back, you know, in order to go forward at a faster rate. So my intent was actually to serve her, though she didn't understand it at the time. So sometimes, you know, when you seek out mentors, you might, you know, they might serve you by giving you some harsh advice, or, you know, requiring you to do certain things which you might not understand, though at a certain point in time you will understand.
Right. And tell us, in your career, are there any role models of leadership that you came across, or maybe in your learning journey, that you would recommend future leaders should study?
You know, I don't have role models as such, and I'll explain that why. Because I don't believe there is any perfect person, and I don't believe there's any perfect leader. I think you've got to look at what qualities are you admiring, and look for those individuals who hold the qualities that you're admiring. We do have some great examples, though again, if I had to accolade them, there might be some areas within that person's, you know, leadership style, etc., which might not be positive. So, you know, I mean, locally, I'm a huge fan of Pepe Mare in terms of his passion for purpose and his passion for people. Elon Musk is fearless. I love his fearlessness and just, you know, going bravely where nobody would go before. Richard Branson I find very inspirational. Joe Dispenza's got an incredible story. And, you know, if you're wanting to understand a lot of these concepts which I've mentioned today, he's a very good starting point. He's got some great YouTube videos that are out there. You know, he explains, he's a neurologist, but even he unpacks the science behind thinking and emotions, and which is very much linked to innovation. I mean, you innovate from the frontal lobe of your neocortex, which is a positive state. So he does go into that, and he's got an incredible story himself where he was actually paralyzed in a cycling accident, and he managed to heal himself within 6 weeks using the power of his mind. So very, very interesting to go into neurology. And then Otto Schwarmer, Theory U, you know, going from ego to ecosystem. You know, he's a systems theory expert. And then one of my favorites, and the last one that I'll mention, is Dr. Claire Graves, who really just, when I discovered the work of Dr. Claire Graves' value levels, that gave me a framework that completely changed my life perspective, because it explains the neurology of individuals, how we evolve through different value levels. It also explains how collectives evolve. And it just gave me a framework on which to be able to hang innovation theory and to be able to transform cultures through different levels to get to the level of authentic innovation. So yeah, those are a few of my favorites.
And tell us, Wendy, how can our listeners connect with you, and where should they follow you?
Well, they can go onto our website, which is www.numela.co.za. They can welcome to email me. I'm always happy to answer any queries. My email is wendy@numela, NEWMELLA.co.za, and we are on all social media platforms.
And last but not least, Wendy, is there one piece of advice that you would really like to convey to future leaders that they should implement in their own lives?
Well, the platform that I'm the most active on, you know, in terms of thought leadership is LinkedIn. And the topic that I speak the most about is inclusion. Inclusion is the future of innovation, though it starts with self-inclusion, and that's what a lot of people don't realize. You know, innovation is just a creation of value, but inclusive innovation is a creation of value that serves all stakeholders. So it's still pro-profit, but it serves the entire ecosystem, which makes it more sustainable. And right now you can see systems are failing because they're not sustainable. So the future is inclusive, as I've mentioned previously, though, again, it starts with self-inclusion. So what that means as a leader is that if I want to embrace this new future, if I want to embrace the win-win era, embrace inclusive innovation, I need to start and delve into myself, which is where emotional and social intelligence, you know, addresses in terms of knowing and accepting yourself and knowing and accepting others, because that is the starting point.
Well, Wendy, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your wisdom into the future of leadership and reminding us that innovation starts with inclusion and what you call self-inclusion.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. It's been pleasure chatting with you, Dr. Nick.
Great.